Institute for Faith and Freedom. It is my honor to introduce to you this morning our speakers. First, we have Megan Martin, who is the Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel of the Commonwealth Foundation. Megan is a seasonal legal and public policy professional committed to improving the lives of the people of Pennsylvania. Prior to joining the Commonwealth Foundation, Megan was the Vice President and General Counsel of the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. Before that, Megan broke the glass ceiling at the Pennsylvania Senate to become the first and only woman to serve as the Secretary Parliamentarian. Megan's distinguished three-decade career of service includes all three branches of state government as an attorney for the U.S. Navy and serving in the private sector and academia. Megan has held many titles, but the one that makes her most proud is mom to three great kids and, of course, their family dog, an adorable Bernedoodle. She and her husband, Scott, who just became empty nesters, reside in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania. Lenny McAllister is a senior fellow with the Commonwealth Foundation. Lenny has appeared regularly as a nationally renowned op-ed writer, political analyst, and media staple on outlets ranging from Radio New Zealand and Sirius XM Radio to CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. He has also been a featured speaker at events including the Pennsylvania Leadership Conference and CPAC 2016, the State of the Black Union 2009, and the Essence Music Festival 2012. Lenny was recognized as one of the most influential African Americans under 45 years old in the United States. He is an adjunct professor of African American history at La Roche College in Pittsburgh, and he holds an undergraduate degree in history from Davidson College. Lenny is the proud husband of Lainey and proud father to his 4 children. Please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so delighted to be welcomed back again to Grove City and to your Faith and Freedom Institute. My name is Megan Martin, and I am the COO and General Counsel of the Commonwealth Foundation. And today we are going to discuss an issue that is near and dear to my heart, civics education. I believe that a well-informed understanding of today's government begins with a deep understanding of our history, and that this connection should be at the heart of civics education. Throughout my career, I have made it a priority to initiate and champion projects that enhance civics education. Have you visited our PA Capitol building and gone into the Welcome Center? Well, that was my project. Have you visited the PA Capitol website or the Pennsylvania Senate Library website or the Pennsylvania Secretary of the Senate website? Those were all my legacy projects to strengthen and expand civics education. I have been able to pursue and deliver these special and important projects because of the unique opportunities and insights that my career has given me. I have had the privilege of dedicating my career to improving the lives of the good people of our great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I've been blessed with a career that's unlike any other, where I have had the special opportunities to serve at the highest levels of our state government, where I served 2 governors and as the Secretary and Parliamentarian of the State Senate and for our military, all of which has given me a unique and comprehensive understanding of our government and how it works. And more importantly, I would say it has also given me a deep respect for our constitutional republic, for separation of powers, and the rule of law. This reverence has been the cornerstone of my career for more than 30 years. Sadly, I have learned along the way that many Pennsylvanians and Americans don't have the same respect for our founding principles. And I think it's mostly because they just don't know them. They have not been taught to appreciate the blessings of liberty and the sacrifices that were made and continue to be made to keep us free. I love America, and my husband and I have raised our 3 children to love America. It is absolutely imperative that we teach our children about the amazing history of our beloved nation. Only then will they be able to understand and appreciate the Founding Fathers and their vision for a free and prosperous America, a land of freedom and opportunity. Let me ask you all a simple question today. Why did the colonies declare their independence from England in 1776? It's not a difficult question. And yet today, I'm sad to tell you that far too many Americans cannot answer that simple question. In fact, the Cato Institute found that more than half of adults taking their civics quiz could not explain why the colonies declared independence. That is not just a gap in knowledge, it is a warning sign. When a people no longer understand why their nation was founded, they begin to lose sight of what it stands for and what it requires of them to preserve it. That's why civics education, and for that matter, a quality education in its totality for all American children, is so important. And here in Pennsylvania, the birthplace of our country, I'd argue is the most appropriate place to start a revival of civics education. And the time to do it is now. The American system was built on a bold and demanding assumption that ordinary people are capable of governing themselves. That is a remarkable idea. It was not the norm in 1776, and in many parts of the world today, it is still not the norm. Self-government requires more than freedom. It requires knowledge. It requires an informed citizenry, and it requires the freedom to engage in discussion and debate. There is no one-size-fits-all for America, and the way we teach civics, and really all of education, is best when we embrace diversity. After all, our schools are not turning out robots. We are seeking to raise intelligent and discerning citizens who will strive to preserve and improve this 250-year-old great American experiment. This is why civics education is not optional. It is essential, and it is imperative. It is the foundation upon which everything else in our republic rests. The United States is different. America is not defined by bloodlines or shared experiences. It is defined by an idea. And as we know, nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. That idea is simple, but profound and revolutionary. That all people are created equal, that they are endowed with certain inalienable rights, and that the government derives their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, the American experiment is built on the belief that people can govern themselves. But here is the challenge. A country built on an idea can only endure if its people understand and believe in that idea. If citizens lose touch with those principles, if they are willing to trade freedom for security or debate for false peace, then the foundation begins to weaken. When civic understanding fades, the consequences are real and they are dire. If people do not understand how their government works, how can they participate meaningfully in it? If they do not understand the principles behind their freedoms, how can they appreciate and want to defend them? If they do not know the sacrifices that secured those freedoms, how can they truly value them? A lack of civic knowledge leads to disengagement, it leads to confusion, and over time, it leads to a weakening of the very institutions that depend on an informed public. Freedom is not just maintained through sacrifice in battlefields. It is maintained also every day through understanding in the classrooms. If self-government is the goal, then education is the means. We cannot expect our citizens to fulfill responsibilities they were never taught to understand. And yet, too often, civic education has been treated as secondary, something to be touched on briefly, rather than built into the core of our learning. And that must change. Civic education should be woven into the entire educational experience, through history that explains not just what happened, but why it matters, through discussions that encourage critical thinking and respectful debate, and through lessons that connect principles to real-world issues. Students should not leave school simply knowing that the Constitution exists. They should understand how it works, why it was designed the way that it was, and the role they are meant to play in it. Because one day, they won't just study our system of government. They will be the ones responsible for sustaining it. A free society recognizes that families and communities have different needs, values, and priorities. That principle, pluralism, is a strength, not a weakness. and it should extend to how we educate our children. When families have access to a wide variety of educational options, public schools, charter schools, private schools, homeschooling, and more, they can choose environments that best meet the needs of their children. And among those needs, I would say one of the most essential is robust, meaningful civics learning. When students are in an environment that they choose, there is a greater sense of empowerment, agency, and confidence. When families have a chance to pick a learning environment that reflects their values and engages their interests, they are more likely to develop a meaningful connection to what they are learning. And when that learning includes a deep understanding of American principles, the benefits extend far beyond the classroom. In other words, empowering families in education can help to cultivate more engaged citizens. And engaged citizens are the lifeblood of a self-governing nation. They are the lifeblood of our nation. As we approach the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding, we have a unique opportunity, not just to celebrate, and we should and we will, but also to reflect and to renew. Initiatives that bring history into our communities through interactive exhibits, events, and hands-on learning can help make civic principles come alive. I am proud to be part of one of those initiatives. I'm proud to represent Commonwealth Foundation on the America 250 Civics Education Coalition. This is a coalition that is leading patriotic and civic revitalization all across our nation. The coalition is launching programs including state tours, lectures, student competitions, and teacher summits, all of which celebrate our nation's rich history and inspire citizens of all ages to reflect on America's story, to deepen understanding of civic responsibility, and to reinforce the shared values that unite us as one nation. These important initiatives allow students to experience history, not just read about it. They turn abstract ideas into something tangible. But 1 year alone, no matter how strong, cannot rebuild the foundation of civics education that has sadly eroded over generations. To truly strengthen civic understanding, we must make it a sustained priority, one that reaches students wherever they are. If America is an idea, then every generation is its steward. We are not just inheritors of a system, we are caretakers of a principle. And that principle must be taught, understood, valued, and renewed. Students should learn not only about the founding of the country, but also about their ongoing responsibility to live up to its ideals. They should understand that the American experiment is not static. It is something that evolves, but it is guided by the same core principles. This kind of understanding does not produce blind patriotism, but rather it produces thoughtful, informed, and committed citizens. The kinds of citizens on which a republic depends. The kind of citizens on which our republic depends. So, what must we do? If we believe in self-government, and we do, then we must invest in the knowledge that makes it possible. We must ensure that every student understands the founding principles of the nation, recognizes his or her role as a citizen, and appreciates the responsibilities that come with freedom. This is not about politics. It is about preparation. Preparation for the preservation of a nation built on an idea, the most prosperous nation this world has ever seen. Let me return again to that opening question. Why did the United States declare its independence in 1776? Because a people believed they had the right and the ability to govern themselves. That belief gave birth to a nation, our nation. But it is not self-sustaining. It depends on each generation understanding it, embracing it, and carrying it forward. A country built on an idea can only endure if its people believe in that idea. And people can only believe in what they understand. So if we want to preserve this republic, not just for ourselves, but for the next 250 years and beyond, we must begin where it matters most, in our schools, in our classrooms, in the hearts and minds of our children. That's just one reason why the Commonwealth Foundation fights every day for the freedom of families to choose the school that best fits their child's needs. No matter your income, your zip code, or beliefs, all children in Pennsylvania deserve access to an affordable and quality education in a safe school. Education choice is deeply personal to me. My dad always told me that his education was his ticket out of poverty. My dad grew up during the Great Depression, and when his dad, my pop-pop, lost his job, my dad was 8 years old, and he went to work to help feed his family. My dad was the son of immigrants who grew up in poverty, but he ultimately went on to become a doctor and then a surgeon and to realize the American dream. 25 years ago, the Commonwealth Foundation helped pass one of the first school choice programs in the nation, opening doors for children just like my dad to pursue a brighter future. Today, more than 100,000 students across Pennsylvania attend schools where they can thrive, thanks to scholarships that are funded by businesses and individual donors. But the need is far greater because 70,000 children were turned away. They remain on a waiting list, still hoping for a chance. To achieve that revival of civics education and the American spirit, we need to expand our education choice options. And this includes opting in to the first ever federal scholarship tax program that was signed by President Trump last summer. Next year, anyone with a federal tax liability of $1,700 can claim this tax credit to fund a scholarship. But Pennsylvania schools can only tap into this resource if the governor opts our state in. So each of you can play a role in the revival of civics education and in safeguarding the future of our nation by participating in this new program and or participating in Pennsylvania's existing programs, ensuring every child can learn in an environment where they can thrive. The future of self-government does not begin in Washington. It begins with what we choose to teach our children. Thank you again for giving me this opportunity today. I'm delighted to be here. May God bless all of you, and may God bless our beloved America. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Megan, so much for your remarks, and thank you all for having me here at another annual conference hosted by the Institute for Faith and Freedom. Education equity, it's more than just school choice. Choosing quality education for all is the choice for liberty. Liberty over limitations. It's the difference between a genuine pursuit of happiness and chasing one's tail in an exercise of futility. The great abolitionist, Mr. Frederick Douglass, once said that education means emancipation. It means light and liberty. It means the lifting of the soul of man into the glorious light of truth, the light by which men can only be made free. Now that verb educate means to give intellectual, moral, and social instruction to. That is what we are all called to do. Use education to give intellectual, moral, and social instruction. Every politician, every political analyst, every community activist, and every public speaker, we all have that same responsibility. If we want a better America, we must ensure that education provides that instruction towards that path to liberty. It must facilitate emancipation, moving people away from the periphery of society and into inclusion as equal, valued, and engaged contributors to our collective American story. Now, in every instance of my life, as a 22-year-old father working as a deli clerk, a 29-year-old undergrad student going back to school and working in the mailroom, and even as a second-act American working with both the Tea Party and Rainbow Push Coalition alike, I've always seen and recognized the power of education. Because education opened doors for me that my circumstances and even my flaws might have bolted shut otherwise. Education empowered me with a hope to accomplish something better. Security to stand upon knowledge, to reach for something more, and opportunities to discover a world outside of my current situation. That's why my wife and I, Laney, push for education so much, not only in our personal lives, but also in the lives of our children. But let's think about this for just a second. Is that not what the American dream is truly all about? Pursuing happiness to capture opportunities, standing upon knowledge of self, as well as knowledge of America, to be able to find those opportunities to be better as a nation, to be that more perfect union. That knowledge is why this year is so special. This year signifies the importance for others to learn the things that we have learned as Americans ourselves. The power of the American story, the power of our founding documents, and the power of the American people. So here we sit in 2026, standing at the brink of a very grand celebration, America's 250th birthday. And yet, this moment finds challenges, as we well know: cultural division, academic failures, domestic strife, and economic stagnation to go along with both economic and military war. There are way too many Americans that are in need. They are stuck on the outside looking in. Stuck in large part because the academic institutions, those education pillars that we counted on to lift us up, they have let us down for far too long. And it's our job to help them, and we are indeed called to do so. Today, we work every single day to break the chains over the minds of Americans that are locked out of a quality education. Frederick Douglass faced America's challenges and a calling to liberate people in a different type of way, as we well know, 175 years ago. And back then, we know what he was doing. He was looking to pick the locks of enslaved people across this nation. During another American birthday celebration, he saw his own cultural divisions based on the issues of slavery, a recent war at the southern border with Mexico, and of course, brewing tensions with southern states. On top of that, he had to deal with the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 and economic hiccups along the way. Like us today, he felt turbulence amid the jubilance. So he asked a question to the people while he stood in the Corinthian Hall in Rochester, New York, for a 4th of July celebration in 1852. He said this: "What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. I am not included. The blessings in which you this day rejoice are not enjoyed in common." Now think about this. These words came from the most photographed man in the 19th century, a man that was revered from Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania to Paris, France. And yet, with all that frustration, hurt, anger, and isolation that he felt in that moment, Douglass still knew through his education the power of what the American story could be. He pointed us back to the best of who we should be and who we can be. In that same exact speech, he also said, "The Constitution is a glorious document. Read its preamble. Consider its purposes. I therefore leave off with hope. My spirit cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age." He called on his fellow citizens to hear the mournful wails of millions amid national celebrations on the 4th of July. He called on them to work towards education and liberation, uplifting the soul into the glorious light of truth. He reminded them that progress, just like we face today, will always require a struggle. Because as he said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those words still ring true today. Now, as we well know, his America was divided by slavery. Ours today is divided by inequality and inequity, particularly when it comes to education. Quality education of self, schooling, and society, and American society, was preeminent back then. It liberated Douglas. It remains a battleground issue today to liberate millions more. Now again, Douglas pointed us back to the Constitution in 1852. He said, look at the preamble. And for a moment, let's do that. That preamble states, among other things, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty for us and, of course, future generations. Does that message still resonate today? Of course it does. Emancipation, that concept, it's as timeless as Christ freeing us from sin on Easter Sunday. Enlightenment is as game-changing as the Holy Spirit descending on Pentecost. Liberty is as encompassing as the Declaration in 1776, and empowerment is as strong as our Constitution has been for over 200 years. Now, whether we lean on our Christian faith or count on our secular values, we have a higher duty to lead our countrymen into their higher ceilings of life, into that light of liberty through education. Now, Douglas did that. He opened the doors to liberty through the civil rights calling of the 19th century, and that was abolition. But he could not do that without educating himself and leading to the education of millions more. We are called to do the same today. My colleagues at the Commonwealth Foundation, all of us in this hall today, we are called to bring people to liberty through the civil rights issue of the 21st century, and that is education equity. That's why I talk about it so much in my career. That is why I talk about it so much in my book, A Venn Diagram of One. Education ends up being a bridge concept throughout the book because education is the great equalizer. That common road we travel from one's current lot in life to that higher destiny that we all share. For my parents, it allowed two inner city kids that fell in love during the civil rights movement to raise 3 college graduates in one generation. I've seen the power of education in my life, but if we look at American history, we can plainly see that it's available for all of us over time. A runaway slave illegally learned how to read. A great emancipator who walked miles just to get his favorite book. We have seen generations chase education and sacrifice for education and value education because they knew that their lives would change, and we were the beneficiaries because America changed as a result. If liberty is the sweet elixir of America, education is the straw that stirs the drink. That's why with our actions, with our words, and with our policies, we must heed not just the celebrations this year, but we must also listen to the wail of millions. There are millions of children across this country that are struggling in bad schools, that have been stuck in bad schools for far too long. They do not have the ability to free themselves of the chains of generational poverty, not just economically, but academically as well. We have to understand and remember that education brings forth equality and liberty. And as a nation rooted in Christian values, just as this great college is rooted in Christian values, we are called to educate and liberate with civic love, but also with visionary acts, the work of the Commonwealth Foundation, the work of each one of you in here today. When we succeed at doing that, we bring about a higher sense of security, empowerment, and opportunity. That takes root in the lives of millions of Americans. It helps them uplift their family tree and spread their branches into possibilities they could not imagine prior. We must always remember that because our obligation is more than just fighting a policy fight. Our obligation is to liberate Americans in the 21st century. If our efforts in education equity shifts funding for students, but doesn't shift the hearts and minds of those kids to be more engaged as Americans, we may save money, but we won't save America. If our efforts in school choice moves kids from failing schools to better schools, but we can't move them from poverty of the mind and of the pocketbook into a greater sense of civic pride and prosperity, we may save money, but we will not save America. If our efforts improve grades for failing students, but doesn't empower them to understand the value of them being fully engaged American citizens, we may save money, but we won't save America. Thomas Jefferson warned us, educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. Abraham Lincoln reminded us, the most important subject which we have to be engaged in, that every man may receive at least a moderate education. That appears to be an object of vital importance. President James Madison implored us, knowledge will forever govern ignorance. People must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives. And the grandest founding father, George Washington, directed us, a primary object should be the education of our youth in the science of government. What species of knowledge can be equally important? And what duty more pressing than communicating it to those who are to be the future guardians of the liberties of this country? That liberty that Washington spoke of, that falls to each and every one of us today. That's why my book weaves a thread between education equity and education significance so much. That's why the duty that Megan and Elizabeth and others on our team and others here at Grove City, that's why it means more than just holding people accountable or pushing Democrats to live up to their campaign promises, including Josh Shapiro and school choice. You must have heard what he said back when he was running the first time around. We need to hold them accountable to policies that their voters are actually continuously asking for. And one of those options, one of those policies, one of those promises, one of those needs is more school choice options. And there's a reason for that. That duty that we have, that they have, is often the difference between young Americans learning about the vastness of American opportunities in the American dream, or just focusing on the smallness of where they are right now and diving into despair. Now, I can say this very personally because I know that. I lived that firsthand. I've been on both sides of that. And the founding fathers, after living it, I can assure you, those men were right. Education is the doorway to a higher destiny for individual Americans and as an American people. Empowerment, liberty, governance, importance. Those values cannot be grasped without a firm grasp on formal education. But yet our children's appreciation for America as the land of opportunity won't flourish if this education stops merely with better textbooks and higher test scores. It has its purpose, but for all of us, we're not going to all work at a think tank, but we can all show the value of being a better American. We can all show the value of granting and getting and receiving and sharing that security, empowerment, and opportunity that education provides. We need to do that through education equity and moving forward, working with good teammates, but working in the ways that we can. Take security for just a moment. The everyday American, that person that finds themselves left out, feeling that the American dream's not for them, they can find the moxie necessary to climb out of the deficits that life gave them. They can succeed once they have the proper education that allows them to remember their value as a child of God, their potential as a human being, and their equity and inclusion as a contributor to an American society. Take empowerment. The everyday American, that person that doesn't think that the American dream applies to poor kids in Appalachia or immigrant and naturalized citizens in Erie. Those folks can be empowered to succeed with second acts after failing the first time around, such as Colonel Sanders up there. They're able to find that ladder of success to rung once they have the spirit of education and liberty within them. And of course, take opportunity. The everyday American, that individual that thinks that the American dream is only for the rich, doesn't apply to them. With education, they can find the little mustard seeds of opportunity, the ones that you and I have found over the course of our lives, that allows us to network and grow and go from one lot in life to a higher station and be able to be better contributors to the American dream. That comes if education sparks a student's mind to do more than just get good grades. Education must also liberate that student, that individual child, and inspire them to be more engaged as an American citizen. And again, I know firsthand. Through education, I did it. I went from a deli clerk and a glorified typist to a Davidson College graduate and a published author because of education. I went from a college dropout to an analyst and an activist. That's one lifetime full of second acts, liberating second acts, and it only became true because of education. Where children go to school matters, and what kids are being taught in those schools matter. Yet we have to make sure that with education equity, the policies we put in place, we also put a mindset in place that reminds those kids that they are capable as Americans. Because just formal education, that involves learning. But true education and true education equity, that includes liberty. The school choice movement must continue to be inclusive, feeding a child's mind as well as their spirit. Children must be able to find better schools, but also find their way in life, their way to contribute to the American dream. And when we do that, they're going to ask us to do more. They'll ask us to be stabilizers during these turbulent times. They'll ask us to be more involved, not just as school choice advocates, but as active Americans. They will ask us to use our platforms to make sure that they can bring about truth and justice in everyday life. They will ask us, don't just stop at funding scholarships. Allow us to be higher contributors to society. They will ask us, don't just teach us civics, teach us how to be better American citizens. These questions signify the goal of our school choice battle. The goal is not just to teach kids more facts. The goal is to teach kids how to be better Americans and strengthen our citizenship moving forward. If we push for education equity, we can do so. Frederick Douglass, a man that overcame slavery, as we well know, also said during that 4th of July celebration, "Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your shouts of liberty and equity and equality, hollow mockery. This 4th of July is yours, not mine." We cannot let those feelings from 1852 fester in the hearts and minds of Americans in 2026. We can't allow the rightful sounds of celebration and gratitude for this American experiment to ring hollow in the hearts and minds of Philadelphians and Pittsburghers as well. That's the civics lesson that resonates from 1776. That's the promise of school choice in America. That is the duty that we need to take up today. It's a time-tested lesson. We can shift laws, but we also need to shift hearts and minds. We can educate the people on formal facts, but we have to educate them with a sense of liberty so that they can be better Americans as well. Because liberty cannot be contained by any policy. Liberty is the purpose of every policy we have in America. It's intertwined with emancipation, empowerment, and enlightenment. So our battle must always keep that in mind. Our fight for education reform must be about the lifelong impact of education and knowledge. It is to teach more children to read at grade level because, as Douglas said, once you learn to read, you will forever be free. It is to teach more children to think critically and love America. For as Douglas said, it is easier to build strong children than it is to build and repair broken men. It is to bring more children to quality education, to find that appreciation of the liberty that we have in America. For as Douglas said, the cost of liberty is less than the price of repression. Today, we must choose the lower cost of our invaluable liberty. We must never repeat Douglas's sentiments from 1852, and we do that by educating our school children here in the Commonwealth, but also educating our fellow Americans, making sure that liberty is always tied to education, and we do so from the moment they learn phonics all the way through to the rest of their lives. Thank you all for this opportunity today. God bless you all, and God bless this Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Now we have time for a couple questions. Yeah, raise your hand and then I'll come to them. All right.
My question specifically for Megan. As a homeschool mom, I was wondering if there was a specific civics curriculum that you guys have encountered that you would recommend, high school or middle school level.
Good morning. Thank you. That's a wonderful question. We have not put forth from Commonwealth Foundation a civics education curriculum, but it is something. I'm here today with my colleague, Elizabeth Stell, who is our Vice President of Policy. So she's the policy guru in the organization, one of several. And so we have been having that conversation and talking to lawmakers about what do we think would look like the best civics education curriculum. So it is something that we have been looking into. And if you have any thoughts or suggestions, please, afterwards come up and I can give you my business card, and we would love to know your thoughts on that. And I can tell you, just from my experience, what I did in the Capitol, the projects that I had mentioned earlier, if you go to, for example, the PA Capitol Tour Guide website, there's a whole classroom section, and it's dedicated all to civics education, and it's wonderful. And so that could be something that helps you and jump starts you for purposes of homeschooling. But I certainly would be happy to talk with you offline, and Liz would as well, to give you some other insights. Thank you for the question.
And ma'am, if I may, I would be remiss. Part of what I do is in this realm, in virtual education. There are 14 cyber charter schools that are free for your kids to attend. So if you ever feel as though I want to do the homeschooling, but I need a little bit more heft, those companies, including the one that I work for, full disclosure, K-12, they provide courses that you could buy from them. So there's a lot of resources out there. Just know that there's a value in homeschooling, you obviously get that, but there are also resources that help you along the way, whether it's a onesie, twosie course or something more robust.
How do we improve public schools? That seems to be where a lot of the failure is, where we aren't challenging the students early enough, and we're spending so much time with behavior issues and parental issues that we are not giving them the core information that they need. And they don't need to go to college. We need to educate them so that they can go either route that they choose.
Well, I'm going to let the guru go second because she's going to give you more detailed facts. But what I will say from the high-level perspective is, too often in states such as Pennsylvania and other highly unionized states, education is an industry, not a vocation. And as long as the people that are running that quote-unquote industry don't see it as a vocation, they see children as widgets, not as our future. And once you have that in place and it's entrenched, And that becomes the reason why Pennsylvania per capita is one of the states that finds their teachers on strike the most. It's nothing more than a factory. It's not a place to mold the future.
How do we change it?
I said I was going to let it go to the guru for that part.
I'll do my best. Thank you, Lenny. Sarah, thank you for that question. And that is really why we at Commonwealth Foundation do what we do. We think that iron sharpens iron, and that the public school system would do better because of school choice, because they will be motivated, because they have competition. They will be motivated to do better by our students. Our students deserve a high quality education. And when you look at the numbers, for those of you who aren't aware, it's staggering. You know, the national numbers are in. We have 15% of Pennsylvania 8th graders who are proficient in math and 18% who are proficient in reading. That is despicable, and our children deserve so much better than that. And so, you know, this is why we have been fighting for school choice, because school choice is what gives these parents and these children a fighting chance, an opportunity at a high quality education in a safe environment, in an environment that best meets their children's needs. The funding is not the answer. So often we hear, oh, there's not enough money for our public school system. Well, let me tell you that there is plenty of money. We spend $23,000 per student in Pennsylvania on public school education, and that puts us in the top of the nation. We're number 7 in the nation based on last year's figures. And so it's not that we are not investing financially in the schools. And I would further add that I guess I would say that for the parents who are out there who are struggling, you know, we hear real life stories all the time. My colleague Liz was just telling me about a young woman in Harrisburg named Marcy Smith. She's a single mother of 4, and her children get to go to the education that she wants them to have because of the scholarship programs, because of EITC. And so, you know, these are real life stories with real consequences for our children. I talked about it in my remarks. Lenny talked about it in his. You know, we have a duty and an obligation to give our children, you know, the best opportunity. Listen, we can give them the education, and then it's up to them. You know, I've got 3 kids. One's out of college, gainfully employed and not asking me for money, so I feel like I've done all right. And the other 2 are still in college. And so, but you know, I told you earlier, my dad said his education was his ticket out of poverty, and it was. And he believed, I'm one of 6 kids, and he believed in educating all of us, and so he invested in all of us. And education is an investment in our children. It's an investment in their future and the future of our beloved America. And so, you know, our public schools, you know, there are plenty of really great public schools out there, so I don't want to disparage, paint them all with a bad brush, but there are definitely schools that have 0% proficiency. 0% of their students are proficient in math or reading. That's unconscionable. And so we must do better, and those schools need to step up in terms of the quality of education that they're providing. But the kids who are trapped in those schools, they should have a fighting chance, and they should have a chance to go someplace else where they can get lifted out of poverty.
Well, thank you both for coming and presenting. Great stuff. Very inspiring. As a member of the Erie County Republican Committee, and I speak probably for everybody here, it's very frustrating come election day to see the terrible voter turnout. I mean, when you talk about basic civics, you know, get out and vote, for crying out loud. So it's very frustrating. You know, so I guess myself, I'm always saying, what can I do to make a difference? When I had young children, I would bring them into the voting booth with me to, you know, model that. And all of my kids and grandkids, well, my grandkids aren't quite of voting age yet, but they're getting there. And one of them is here today, which is kind of exciting for me. But I guess what I wanted to ask you is, what do you attribute the decline of civics education to? You know, why are we where we're at now in terms of civics education? And as individuals, what is it that we can do to help, you know, individually and maybe more corporately encourage that to increase?
That's too tough of a question. We're going to go ladies first. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to put her on the hook. I know she has a great answer. I would say first and foremost, it goes back to what Megan was saying. If kids can't read and write, how can they critically think? If you can't critically think, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to go into that voting booth and vote for who they tell you to vote for, which means, until very recently, it was you push one button, you vote for 20 people, you go back, you feel like you did your civic duty. And all you did was rubber stamp the same things that have been causing you angst for 3 and 4 generations. We have to get back to educating our kids so that they can learn how to critically think. The second thing is, we have to teach our kids, back to your point about civics. The American story is so robust, complex, inspiring from all different angles. But too often we only teach it from one angle. It's either we're super great or America's wicked. And that's it. We see it in the media. We've seen it in the schools. And if you go into the public schools where they're very politicized because of the whole situation with unions and everything else, that just gets amplified. That's where we can chip away at that wall. That's our Berlin Wall. Deliberate people, if you will. One by one, each one of us can show kids, no. Even if you look at 1856, even what I just talked about with Frederick Douglass in 1852, he was angry and then turned around and said, I leave you with hope. It's like, wait a minute, it didn't sound like you were being very hopeful just 15 minutes ago in that speech, guy. But he did both. That's the epitome of America. We can find these things all over our history. We don't need a history teacher at a public school in 7th grade to do that. We can do that as grandparents. I know I look suave, but I'm a granddad too. And we can do that as grandparents. We can do that as community members. We can do that as church members. And if we do that, then people can critically think and then do so going into the voting booth and voting for politicians and policies that are going to make our communities better.
I don't have much to add. I agree with everything that Lenny said. I think that
I was reading Megan's notes off my hand, that's why.
I think that, sadly, we are a nation divided now more than ever, and half of the country loves America, and half of the country seems to be, fighting for all the values upon which we all stand and that we hold dear, and then there's a large portion of our country who thinks other. And I think that it really, a large part of it has been very deliberate. The teachers' unions, have such a stranglehold on education, not only in Pennsylvania, but across the country. And so, the education curriculum is changing. And instead of, talking about America, the whole great American experiment, the history, there's good and bad, but there's a lot more good than there is bad. And I think that our young people are only being taught about the bad, the things in our history that we wish we could change. But you're never going to improve and grow if you don't face what was in the past and then learn from it and vow never to repeat it. And you can't just whitewash history or erase it or write some kind of new history. And we have so much to be proud of in America. I believe in American exceptionalism, and I want all of our children to also have that same belief. And so I think it really does stem to being actively engaged parents. I think that for as bad as COVID was, it was a wake-up call to so many parents, because when we saw our kids getting their Zoom education and what they were learning or not learning, we were shocked and appalled. And so that was really one huge blessing that came out of COVID in terms of opening our eyes as parents and grandparents and what kind of nonsense and poison was being fed to our children through the education system. So I think that parents are very much engaged now, and they're aware, and they are taking on, I think, the obligation of civic responsibility by talking to themselves. Just like you, I used to take my kids in the voting booth with me. And I was a candidate several years ago. I ran statewide, and I involved my children and my husband in my campaign, and that was really important. And so I just think that we need to set the example for our children and for the people in our communities and live out our values, and then our children, tell them, we expect you to live out these values as well, and we're going to show you how, and we're going to teach you so that you want to defend, our wonderful country.
More perfect union means you're going towards something. I mean, Megan brought up a wonderful phrase that I love saying, American exceptionalism. That's not American perfectionism. That's not American failure. It's exceptionalism. We're aspiring to be exceptional. We've been exceptional in many areas. We will reevaluate to be more perfect in a more perfect union pursuit moving forward. If we can teach our kids that, show that in school, show that in our daily lives, we have a much better chance to get them where we need to get them to be.
Yeah.
Thank you. Please welcome me, or join me in thanking Lenny and Megan.
That was great, sir. Thank you. Great job. That was wonderful.
Never have any problem. It's hard.
Oh, I was thinking. Was it here? Is that where they were?
One and two.
You're such a pro.
Thank you. So are you. You know you are. Sir, how are you?